oder heute eben auf der Ebene den Dialog und das wirklich auch das Design miteinander machen kann.
Ich bin auch eine Kollegin hier von der Margarita und Unterricht hier. Das ist das Sommersemester, waren 7 Fächer, also von Humanökologie und Wirtschaft. Wir müssen relativ viel unterrichten.
Oh, wow, ja.
Die Online-Themen kommen.
Danke.
Ich bin der Rupert, Student und mit meiner Bachelor-Thema, also ich bin auch von aus Vorarlberg, mein Bachelor-Thema ist, wie man auf Gemeindeebene die Wahlbeteiligung erhöhen kann und die Interesse für Politik und Beteiligung gestalterisch erhöhen kann. Und deswegen ist der beste Spaß auch immer wieder um Vernetzung geht und wie man Leute erreicht. Und das ist jetzt, wieso ich mich dafür entschieden habe, weil es einfach, finde ich, so schwierig, gewisse Bevölkerungsgruppen und so, die sich schon wenig beteiligen, dazu bringen kann, sich zu beteiligen. Und so. Ich dafür entschieden, weil ich so verschiedene kennenlernen wollte, wie man Leute einfach erreicht und vernetzt.
Super, dann danke ich sehr an Margarita. Das ist natürlich hier allen wahrscheinlich bestens bekannt, gell? Aber nachdem du es hier auch zusammengeführt hast.
Ja, Margarita Kühl, Fachbereichsleiterin Gestaltung. Es war eigentlich die Grundidee von unserem Starten Vorarlberg, dass wir uns eigentlich mit Räumen beschäftigen, aber nicht mit physischen Räumen allein, sondern mit sozialen Räumen und wie man sie gestalten kann. Die können sich im Digitalen abspielen, aber natürlich auch im Hybriden, wo wir jetzt sehen, das ist eine große Herausforderung, wie man die gestaltet. Und dann war natürlich die Frage der Disruptivität, disruptive Innovation wird meistens aus ökonomischer Perspektive betrachtet oder das ist ein Buzzword geworden und wir wollen diesen Begriff eigentlich hinterfragen und sozusagen Modelle entwickeln, wie man den Wandel oder seine Disruption auch anders denken könnte. Ja? Und das war eigentlich der Kontext und an euch habe ich dann natürlich gedacht, weil ihr euch ja sehr stark mit diesem Raum der Themen beschäftigt. Und darum finde ich ganz toll, dass ihr jetzt beide hier seid. Wir sind ja erst gestern am Abend gekommen. Ich muss jetzt dazwischen kurz anmerken, wir sollten dazwischen so englische Sammlung machen, weil wir von der Arzt und Publikum dabei. Ja.
Wo viel Stunde ist?
Genau.
Ja, genau.
Aber jetzt als Ganzes.
Ja, muss ich dann dazwischen kurz.
Okay, then so I did the sum up in English. I am super happy to have you all here, and what I found most interesting is that all your different perspectives are really diverse, various angles to tackle all the topic, and there's not a summary yet. Sorry, your introduction is missing.
Ja, also ich habe es nicht gelesen. Ich komme eigentlich ursprünglich aus einem ganz anderen Bereich, also ich weiß nicht, wo wir mit dem Studium anfangen, was wirklich zum Kleinstudien das Ganze. Aber mir hat das sehr interessiert und ich bin sehr interessant, neue Sachen rauszufinden. Und das war eigentlich der Hintergrund, dass ich mich für Gras entschieden habe und nicht für das mein Next-Work machen hätte können, weil es ganz gut wäre, neue Sachen auszuprobieren, neue Sachen zu entdecken. Und eben, mir ist schon voll aufgefallen, so eine Nachbarschaft, in dem, wo ich jetzt wohne, das für straßenrechtliche Menschen natürlich miteinander fahren. Okay, wie kann man das ein bisschen wiederbeleben? Das ist jetzt sehr spannend, das habe ich schon gemacht. Ja, das finde ich sehr interessant, und wie kommen Menschen wieder zusammen? Das geht jetzt immer alles gleich auseinander. Also, man muss nicht so wahrnehmen, vor allem jetzt denke ich Corona. Und ja, also finde ich spannend, was daraus möglich ist, wie man das mit seinem gegensteuern kann.
Yeah, and so this is beautiful to the summary I was just intending to do, because it is really about different angles how to approach this texture of society and cities as our playground. Let's rebuild the cities, or let's how Mark will now describe in his presentation, also not only rebuild but maybe reorganize the ways we live together, and the different heads and roles and expertises you bring into today's session will, on one hand, of course, make it complex to to navigate your expertises and to bring it together to one coherent picture is maybe too much to ask from a Saturday morning. However, I think it is the only way that we will be able to tackle the climate crisis, to tackle our society issue. It will be about inviting everybody in, because future is a team sport. It's not possible that we continue the way we do right now. That in Vienna, for instance, a third of the populations don't even have voting rights. So how is a society which claims to be democratic able to strive in the future if a third is left out from the official democratic processes? Then we have societal changes in regard to how people live together. Another number now from Vienna, the average square meters of a flat are now 25 square meters, and the smart unit tendency, this trend to really build very small apartments for single-person households, might have beneficial effects in regard to energy and resource consumption. However, what does it mean for society? There is cooking together, thinking together, working together taking place if you have so little space. But on the other hand, or not on the other hand, but in relation to this question, how can we find out ways to consume less and maybe construct new ways of living together if we're not even meeting apart from areas where you consume? So these kind of questions are from experience design to also the built environment, to the digitized access questions, of course, of open source as well. That now, for instance, it happened to us several times when we started to talk about our ideas of shared spaces, shared new typologies. We will easily be confronted with this backlash of, yeah, but there's WeWork and there's all those huge companies and there's platform capitalism and sharing economy is dead. And I'm like, yeah, okay, because there was a dead development, we stopped the good parts of it. No, we have to redesign and probably also pull some of the bad experiences of bad developments to a new side again. So it will always be navigating complexity. And to end this little summary with a quote by Nora Bateson. She's the daughter of, you might have heard of Gregory Bateson. He was one of the very first theorists in regard to systems theory. He was also the inventor of systems therapy. Gregory Bateson, an anthropologist by training, and Nora Bateson, his youngest daughter, is still doing what she calls warm data labs where she also works worldwide in regards to societal change. And she says, solve everything at once. It's a very, very short quote, but solve everything at once. The complexity of the problems we're facing, we cannot solve them without addressing our own complexities. So this is the individual part, the psychologist again speaking. But also, it's not the silo mentality. We have heard this many times, and still you're faced with it. When we talk to universities, when we talk to administrations, when we talk to politics, it's silos. There's this expert, there's this specialized. There's maybe even this beautiful work group tackling or dealing with most pressing issues. However, their outputs will never be integratable in what is really needed in regard to another silo where, again, beautiful minds are working on things. And so this complexity that we will face today in the morning, by so many different perspectives, so much knowledge, we will try to solve everything at once, okay? And now Mark will start with his presentation. Some of you might have heard his presentation yesterday. Who did it? Okay, the good news is he will switch or skip some or have a very short part on the intro, and there's lots more. And pictures. And the other question is, how well do you see the Musikmodell
vorgehen und
Diese Bewegung in der Früh. Vielleicht ja, sich hinstellen oder hinrutschen oder so. Es sind keine sehr eng beschriebenen, sondern eher wirklich die Struktur, die man jetzt.
Jetzt ist hier. Ich muss ein bisschen zurückgehen.
Ich werde auch schauen, dass ich in das Mikrofon hineinspreche. Ich mache dort weiter, wo ich gestern eigentlich aufgehört habe. Ja. Also mein Name ist Marc Neuner. Ich bin von der Plattform Most Likely und das habe ich auch gestern schon gezeigt, dass wir sind in der Architektur auch mit einem großen Umbruch konfrontiert. Wir gehen von der klassischen Planung, wo wir eigentlich als Architekten nur für die Häuser verantwortlich waren, öffnen wir uns wieder und schauen uns einfach die ganzen neuen Möglichkeiten an, die die Digitalisierung bringt, aber auch der Ressourcenmangel, den man durchaus auch als Möglichkeiten wahrnehmen kann, an und schauen, dass wir normalerweise plant ein Architekt, gibt eine ganz konkrete Bauaufgabe und da heißt es, wir müssen so und so viel Quadratmeter verbauen und wir sind dann eigentlich für das Gebäude verantwortlich. Und ich meine, Architektur betrifft uns alle, wir bewegen uns in den Räumen und was passiert ist in den letzten 20 Jahren, dass sich die Stadtverwaltung stärker zurücknehmen musste, weil es teilweise weniger finanzielle Ressourcen gab und dass wir sozusagen das Feld teilweise wieder zurück, man kann jetzt nicht sagen erobern, aber sozusagen auch wieder bespielen müssen. Und das heißt, wir als Architekten tun uns jetzt in letzter Zeit viel mehr auch mit der Stadt wieder beschäftigen. Wie kann man Stadt machen? Was ist innovative Stadt? Und wie können wir eigentlich von dieser Art Reißbettplanung, wo es eine Aufgabe nach der anderen gibt, wegkommen und mehr mit den Nutzern, mit den Stadtbewohnerinnen diese Räume entstehen lassen, weil das sind dann erst wieder neue Räume, die auch gut angenommen werden. Und ich glaube, deshalb befinden wir uns auch heute hier in diesen zurzeit noch nicht genutzten Hallen oder die jetzt nur temporär bespielt werden, weil das ist von Dornbirn eine ganz große Möglichkeit, neue Räume zu machen, die auch ein bisschen anders funktionieren und auch anders bespielt werden. Also heute in diesem Workshop, ich zeige ein Beispiel von einer leerstehenden Fabrikshalle in Wien, wo wir das Konzept gemacht haben für eine Kreislaufwirtschaft, Werkstätte, die einfach auch Infrastrukturen bietet, die für alle offen stehen. Das heißt, das sind geteilte Raumstrukturen. Es gibt sehr viele Start-ups in Wien. Interessanterweise zum Beispiel ein sehr guter Freund von mir, die produzieren jetzt Hundefutter auch und die brauchen dann kurzfristig eigentlich eine Küche, weil man verpackt dann eine bestimmte Menge an Hundefutter. Man braucht eine sehr, sehr große Ausstattung mit Vakuummaschinen, man braucht die ganzen Hygienevorschriften. Das heißt, wenn Sie das selber alles bezahlen müssten, dann müssten Sie ein Riesenunternehmen sein. Und es gibt aber in Wien einen Raum, der nennt sich Open Herd. Und da kann man sich kurzfristig für eine Woche, für 2 Wochen, für einen Monat einmieten und kann diese Infrastruktur nutzen. Man zahlt viel weniger und dann produziert man mal vor. Und wenn man es dann wieder braucht, wenn man das verkauft hat, dann kann man sich wieder einmieten. Das nutzen ganz viele kleine Food-Hersteller. Es tut sich gerade bei Lebensmitteln sehr viel. Es geht wieder zurück auf kleinere Produktionen und die haben auch ganz andere Anforderungen. Und das, was wir vorantreiben, also wir haben ein klassisches Architekturbüro, aber wir haben auch das Common Space Team. Da ist die Irina Nalis dabei, auch die Marlene Lötsch, also da sind wir zu 4, zu 5 und entwickeln eigentlich neue Raumtypologien und die müssen natürlich dann erst einmal in die Stadtpolitik auch einfließen. Das heißt, da muss man sich dann auch überlegen, wie kann man die eigentlich verbreitern. Also auch wenn ihr Ideen habt jetzt, weil ihr sagt, euch interessieren auch Räume, was kann man in diesen Räumen machen, dann ist das einmal eine Idee und da muss man sich auch überlegen, wie kann ich die eigentlich weiterbringen, wie kann ich Interesse dafür, und da wird das Interessante, wo dann Architektur in ganz viele Bereiche hineingreift.
Just a short interruption. I think you need to continue in English if you could. Yeah. So I think the workshop that later on can again be in German because we're just amongst us. But yeah.
And afterwards there's a presentation and we will do it in English.
Okay.
Okay, so to all the listeners of Ars Electronica, I say hello. Now we're gonna continue in English. And I will start a small presentation of our idea of common spaces. As I said yesterday, I already like the name common. What means common? Because the city, it is built over thousands of years often, or decades. So I also think that the whole city doesn't belong to one person. I mean, we have this concept of property, but at the end it's like taxes that pay for the streets. It's like even the military who saves the autonomy of a country. There's so many things that really make out a city. So it's a common good, and we have a very strong new narrative, a new story. Imagine if the city is not centered about property and exclusion at the end, it's more about inclusion, and we have more open spaces, more things that you can use. I mean, we have built so much space. We have piled up so many tools. We have, all of us have some tools like a drilling machine, and we just use it for 1 minute a year. And what's happening if we change the way we use things? We say, okay, if I don't have to have a flat with space for tools, they are in a central space, I can go there and have a well-equipped workshop and I can use it. So it's really a radical new idea about what can be cities. And it's also you're told before that you're interested, how can come people together in space, and what's happening if we share, if we have a market space and we have an open kitchen there, which you can just rent for a short term. Also, if you produce something, you can rent this kind of kitchen. So it's this idea of a shared city that really helps us to reduce our resources, and also socially it's a kind of meeting point. So that's the idea of the common space city model. And as I told yesterday, we have 3 different typologies. I don't know if you remember, one was the market, because it's very interesting how food is produced and how things are sold. The other one is workshops, how do we produce in the city? And the other one is digital new work offices. It's a kind of co-working, but which is not run by WeWork, but which is more run maybe by the government, by NGOs, or just by us as people. And it's all made possible by the digitization. We can organize the spaces very differently. And that's what very interesting and very curious about the workshop, and maybe you bring some solutions. How can we connect physical spaces with the internet, and what can be the advantages and what are the disadvantages, or do we have to be cautious about this? So okay, these are the topics for today, and now I'm gonna switch through a short presentation. It's a project we are working at the moment. We try to convince the Viennese government to build a circular workshop. And also we already have the idea, we made a lot of research. How big should it be? What does it need, a circular workshop? And we are now in the phase of promoting it. Talking to the magistrate in Vienna, talking to interesting people, talking to NGOs, trying to raise money, and trying to get the idea into the coalition paper. And then, there will be many interest groups who have to take part in this. So, I'm gonna switch through this faster. These are just images. We always make the analysis what is in the existing city, what are the problems, and how can we improve it. Like Vienna has 17 market spaces, and they're getting less and less, but there are more local producers. So this is the idea of the local market. I just switch
and
through.
as you switch quickly through this, what was for us important in regard to a common space market was that these days markets are either the one part where there's people with a lot of money being able to enjoy their good life and do some shopping on Saturdays, and maybe also some expensive food will be consumed. But what is missing is a support structure for the people who sell their produce, especially for farmers. They really are often confronted with the situation. It's easier to sell it for less money to Iglo or other huge companies because all the logistics, and this is where of course digitization could come in helpful, to bring it to the market, to sell it there, of course consuming very much of their workforce. And then in days like ours, where marketing is always a thing and people expect the packaging to look beautiful, how will you, as one producer, one maybe local farmer, be able to face those expectations? You're not. So collective action would be possibly a way to enable those farmers. But on the other hand, it would also allow a new structure. A new structure for the markets to become more of a social space than only a consumption space, where, for instance, here this market where we identified the potential of raising not only the awareness of the local produce, but also having children nourished better. It's in an environment where there are many, many schools, but for now, the school kids only go there to consume kebab and pizza and very unhealthy food. But it's on a market where the well-off folks go to buy their produce to be on a healthy side of life. So this gap, this schism, to close this, would of course need social, new cultural techniques, new offers on the market where kids could maybe learn to cook together. And last but not least, there would be the question of food waste. And there are many cooperatives these days, or also agricultural innovations around, especially the Demeter and the more organic farmers, who are really thinking through the whole production chain and are starting to do waste cooking. And of course, these kind of things could easily be integrated in a market where you don't have to start from scratch. Where do we put the waste? Where is cooking allowed? Where is this kind of noise and smell allowed? Because normally it's not allowed in cities to do those kind of things. But good luck! It's already what a joy! It's already here, the opportunity. And to bridge those opportunities with the needs of our times would, we think, not be even the most crazy and most expensive thing to do. It would just need to be done.
Okay, now this is, I just say one word to the markets. This is the market in Vienna, which is the least visited and like economically is doing very bad, and still it's the center of a neighborhood, and it lost its function as a market, but maybe it can function as a social space. And so we made a concept about more the neighborhood market. What can it be if you don't sell food but ideas, if services, if you bring in things there. And so this was our idea of the typology of the market. I mean, it can have many how do you say, characteristics. There can also be like the food market, which is really working as a food. But yeah. Then also we took a look at co-working spaces in Vienna. How expensive are they? What do they cost? And I'm gonna switch this typology a little bit. I just show some images. It was about...
No, it's also important because there are people with co-working backgrounds. Let me just say something. Sorry. I mean, if you don't like...
No, otherwise it gets very long, and then we don't... it also took too long, yes.
Spaces. Here, also the context is very important. We raised this idea. The case was built, in our imagination, in one of the biggest social housing sites of Vienna, one of those very famous Gemeindebauten, who who were built with the idea of not only housing but social community, and where originally there is a lot of space for communal action, but today empty, no use at all. So Leerstandsthematik. And what we also believe is it's not only the reusage, the reactivation of space that is necessary, but also the reconnection and recognition of the creative potential of the people living there, because these days what we also see is that only providing housing will certainly not turn out in lived communities or democratic participation, and it has also something to do with the changes in the world of work. It's in the fancy districts, of course, young people with their expensive computers might frequent co-working spaces. But then you go to more outskirts areas of Vienna, and people start to feel disconnected from the future. It's not their future. A co-working space, that's not something for me. But then there's a pandemic, and suddenly many of the people also living in social housing are confronted with the situation that they would actually need to have some computer workspace, and also maybe some ideas that could be shared with other people and not only in your small flat at home. So the question of where can we build the future together by digital but also coming together is something that we also believe a city like Vienna or other cities should also tackle in regard to the interest of housing, and better combine it with housing questions actually.
Yes. Thank you, Ina, for jumping in, so we don't switch it. I also think like the way we work together, it can be a very good idea for this space. Because like today it's like these empty spaces here, it's the background of the workshop a little bit. And how can we reactivate those spaces? So now I'm coming to the last typology. Like this is just like a diagram. How do we start the process? And like we always bring together the different actors and inhabitants, NGOs, so we look what's happening around, what are the needs, and it's also like the question, what are the needs here in Dornbirn? Maybe you have a lot of working spaces, so then we don't have to produce another one. Maybe like you need like temporary flats. So that's always the question, like if we have those empty spaces, what is needed in the city? Because otherwise we just build another empty space. And there's already quite a lot of it. And like the other thing is like when we bring together, like we make a lot of workshops and we bring different interest groups, and then we try to get another solution, and we're adding those ideas, and a lot of the things it's like about synergies and the multiple use of spaces. Like there is a saying, you don't have to build the city new, you just have to organize it new. And I think it's also the same for Dornbirn. I mean, we can't build a new city and you can't build new spaces because city is built over hundreds of years. So it's just another layer. Yes. So now I'm coming to the circular workshop. Also like it will take now 5 minutes to explain the concept. Like all over Europe, we had a big industry, producing industry, and it all went to Asia or to other countries. So there are many empty spaces. The same, more or less, I think it happened here. Maybe some of you can tell us more about it. What happened to this space? Why it is empty? And now we have seen during the pandemic, and also like because of the CO2 emissions, that we need more local production. I think it's something that we really have to establish. I mean, it's just like, the question is, why do we transport some ideas from here to China? Then they get fabricated, and then we produce, it's gonna produce parts of it, then they come here, then, so like, if you have a product like a drilling machine, the parts are coming from all over the world, and we just can't go on like this in the future. So we really have to change this. So we have to go to the local production, and that's also like to have the right spaces, and also we don't have those big companies, maybe it's like smaller companies. So we also took a look about the workshops in Vienna, and these are open workshops, like workshops which you can rent for a short time. Like you can see, I think we have like 20 spaces where you can rent the workshop for a short time, but they are all quite expensive. Like if you want to produce a stool for yourself, what do you think you need like 3 days when you're very gifted?
Depends back to school.
Yeah.
What do you think?
What do you think? Like, what do you think the material costs?
Well, in these workshops you have to play for the saw and everything. Like you first really need a little of two, right?
Yes. So like you know, there's the idea that people gonna produce their own stuff, or maybe it's like a designer, and you don't have a big workshop, so you're gonna rent it, and like what?
Yeah, you find tools.
Yeah, for 3 days or what?
Yeah, I think so. Roughly you need 3 days to make a stool.
Yeah, I would guess it's like at least I think 20 euros an hour. I would guess.
Yeah.
Like the machines,
Yeah.
a little close by. There are a lot of the machines that I learned to study to be a carpenter.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of machines who cost like 30,000 euros and more, and
Yeah.
also you have like to, because also they break if you have like a saw, a circular saw, the blades, you have to sharpen the blades from time to time, and the people use it who are not really like used to it and how to use them, they also get like dull, and then you need like a new set. I do understand because I thought a lot about it with a friend of mine, like for an open workshop the idea, and I think you really have to, so it will be like 500, 600 euros for the chair, I guess.
Yeah, so like for the material, I think you're gonna pay like 150 euros, which is quite a lot, so it's good wood and also like lacquer. But then you have to pay for the workshop like 500 to 600 euros. And so like the chair adds up to 800, maybe you need 4 chairs, so you end up by 3,200. And then like, you know, you go to IKEA and you just pay like 25 and you have the fun of putting the things together. So yeah, like, so the question is like, but we can't go to IKEA all the time because like otherwise we don't change the situation at the moment. And so the question is also like, I mean, we have swimming pools, public swimming pools, and they, like, you pay entrance like €5, and in the background, the state pays like 200 euros before you visit at the end. Or I don't know what is the money, but it's just very normal that a swimming pool costs money for the city. So maybe it will be normal that like a circular workshop is also like funded by the city, and we pay a lot of taxes for it. So it's also like to establish a new kind of typology, because there are churches and they cost money, and you know there are swimming pools, there are like sport facilities, there are parks, and you know like every tree costs a lot of money because you have to cut it, you have to water it. So okay. And the problem is those open workshops they are very small and very expensive. So they are expensive, few people get there, so they have to get more expensive, they get smaller. So like we have a lot of open workshops, but they only have like 150 square meter and a very simple infrastructure. So it's this, how can we break up this kind of vicious circle? And then the other thing is, how can we, if we say we're gonna build a big workshop, like what is the most pressing issue and what really costs us money? It's like, you know, like there's the CO2 emissions and there will be taxes. So if we gonna save a lot of CO2, we're gonna save a lot of money, and it's not just a little bit of money. Like if we're gonna cut the CO2 emissions by something like 2%, these are already some million euros that we have. So we have to think about the circularity of material flows. And so our idea was we not just just build like a workshop which is working like where you can lend things, but that you also bring in the material flows. So these are really like where you have new materials, where you're gonna recycle materials. There are some good examples in Europe. They already work. It's not because you often hear, this doesn't function, but it works. That this kind of urban mining, that you're gonna reuse materials, and like of old buildings you can recycle 90%, and of new buildings only like 10%, because like the material, like the classical building of 1900, it's made out of bricks, wooden beams, and you can separate the material, you can recycle them. A building which is built like in 2010, like you have a lot of compound materials. You have like all the insulation. You have things that you just can't not recycle anymore. So we have to completely change the way we are building, so that we can recycle more and more. And so there's like one circular enterprise in Austria who takes apart all the Gründerzeit buildings, and they're recycling like 90%. So like then we can build and build, because like if we also use renewable energy, then we don't have to reduce our standards of living. So maybe we have a good future if we solve some of the most pressing issues. Yeah, so like in Vienna, there are like those trash companies, and every day there are like 90 tons of trash that we can recycle. Like that's incredible lot. So these are like 1,080 tons that are going to the waste, but could be in the material flow. So it's also the question, like the circular workshop, maybe like it's also about recycling and how do you produce the material you're going to use there. Yeah, these are questions which are important for our work. And then how can we start this shift, this paradigm shift? And for us it's also like that's the power of architecture, because we all meet in spaces and we all live in cities, and so why it's a topic that is interesting for everybody. And so we're gonna create those hubs, those common spaces hubs, which are a new layer of the city. And like our imagination is that for bigger cities you have to produce like 10 or 12 of these hubs. And like for smaller cities in Dornbirn, for example, maybe there's just like one big hub, but it has to be a certain size. That's something that we really learned. There are those small spaces, but they don't really are able to really change this or to start this kind of transformation. You need a certain size, and you need a certain size where people come together, because it's a lot about synergies. A person alone, or a company alone, or idea alone can't really change so much. So it's really a lot about bringing people together in public space, and maybe this can be also a public space. So we always think about, it's the street, it's the park, that's a public space. But it's not. There are far more public spaces, and with the help of the digitalization, my vision is that it's really easy to use those interior spaces, to use this infrastructure. I mean, there's car sharing. It was impossible like 30 years ago that you don't own a car or that you share it with other people. But like it's just made possible. And I think we also have to bring in these techniques into the architecture and space production. So like in Vienna, I'm gonna switch through. We are nearly at the end, and then we start working. But it's very interesting. There's also like many empty factories, like in Vienna, space is very scarce, but there are some empty factories. They're not in the center, but they are on the border of it. And like also we try to produce images, because when you talk about something, it's nobody can imagine how it looks, and it's important to create those imaginarios. And so you see like this is an old factory, and how could it be when it is transformed? I mean, this is a factory, I think it's like 17,000 square meters which are empty. and it was used to produce like Panzer, tanks. So voice over long. So it's unused since many years. And so if you look at this image, it's like empty, and so we produced another image which is more or less the same perspective and to show what is possible. And you see like a community kitchen, but you also see like more modern infrastructures. And the idea is that people can come together and develop their ideas, but that there are professional companies as well. So it will become a space which works at many levels. And of course, like we try to bring all those smaller companies and NGOs to this space so that they really have good infrastructures and can work in a better way. And these are a graphic for the material flows. So what's happening, like you have a washing machine, and like it just happened to us. We have a washing machine, and after 5 years the pump doesn't work anymore. And like there is one company who comes to your flat and repairs it for less money, but still it was just a repair cost. It was like 350 euros. So like
more expensive than a cheap new one. This is a very clear point.
And maybe I take this minute because I think it's very interesting for you of the perspective of design. So what is circular design? And we really have to design the products differently. Because like a washing machine, you know, it's made of a chip nowadays. It has like different engines and different materials. And like if you really design a washing machine that you can take it apart, I mean, you can use the chip for another device. You can use the engines, and so we're gonna have to design our products differently. So also when you start designing now, maybe you have like digital tools, but maybe you have some devices in reality, like in physical. Think about what's happening afterwards. And nowadays, like if you, for example, you build a mobile phone which you can recycle, it's much more work to design it, much. And to take it over, it's also a lot of work. So yeah, that's from more or less. There are some more images, but I'm gonna stop here. So this is our idea of the Common Space Circular Workshop. And now in our workshop, we're gonna also think about what can we do with this space. And we are particularly interested in your knowledge about digital devices. And how can we connect these spaces? Like the question is, how can you, for example, you want to use something, how can you book this? And how can you enter the room so that you don't have to get the key?
Okay.
Yeah, so, yeah. So,
start from here with the working, but of course I did more introduction to the work steps and worries. These are the general questions.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mark. And he threw in, Mark, right now, the idea of the circular workshop. And we don't want to confuse you too badly this morning, because I don't know if you are involved with circular design, circularity by design, with questions in regard to this. From what I got from the introduction round, this is not so much of your main focus, right? No, not yet. So I think it's good to, in days like these, to at least have dropped the bomb that, as we said earlier, solve everything at once. It will be data and sovereignty by design, hopefully, and by default it should also be democracy by design, and it should possibly be circular by design. And today, the general idea is disruptivity by design. So what we think is, you have now seen a bit what we are thinking of, new layers of public infrastructure. So the example, I just bring it back to your mind, of the swimming pool, also dass es eben Schwimmbäder gibt. That cities decided at one point of their development, there is a need in society, it's good that people stay healthy, how can we solve this in cities where there are not beautiful mountains like here, so we possibly need swimming pools, and that's in the interest of society, so we invest public money for it. And we believe new public money for new solutions will also be needed in order to keep this society with our challenges alive. But now here, in this very space, the circularity, for instance, does not need to be so much in the focus, because rest assured, in 3 weeks we're gonna invite most of those experts working in urban mining, but also in recycling, in the questions that are more tackling the ecological parts of it. So the circularity part is possibly not so much at the focus, but what should be and could be hopefully inspiring for you is this vast space. So this is very much also the starting point from what Mark just showed from the large fabrik in Vienna, that there are spaces that need to be kissed to life. And how would you, with your knowledge and with your ideas of what society would need, so your personal needs and your personal expertise is here in the question, and hopefully a resource to work together, but also what of course have you understood so far from societal needs and possibilities. And what I believe, after so much talk from our side, would be a way to break this barrier and to have the thing started, is laying down the microphone. Ist das okay? Dann auf Deutsch wieder zu wechseln und dann einzuladen, dass ihr jetzt, ihr seid insgesamt ja genauso, dass es zu zweit möglich wird. Plus, minus 5, 6 Minuten mal zu zweit euch zusammentun. Entweder wie ihr sitzt oder euch nochmal verteilt, up to you als Erwachsene. Und mein Gedanke ist jetzt, ihr habt es viel gehört. Und was war davon von euch interessant? Einfach auch mal kurz untereinander, bei der Murmelprobe ein bisschen so wieder reinzukommen, was ist jetzt davon auch mit den Gedanken, die ich schon heute mitgebracht habe, was interessiert mich noch. Und dann aber, als quasi Ergebnis eures kurzen Dialogs, eures kurzen Reflektieren, gegebenenfalls auch sagen, wie Marc, komm nochmal her, oder Irina, was hättet ihr jetzt schon aus eurer eigenen Erfahrung oder eben von dem, was ihr da gesehen habt, wo seht ihr jetzt schon Potenziale? Wie eben so ein Raum, der hier wirklich noch irgendwie sehr, sagen wir mal, ein Möglichkeitsraum ist, noch sehr offen zu gestalten. Wie würdet ihr unter diesen Gesichtspunkten der gesellschaftlichen Herausforderungen zwischen Demokratie und Klimakrise, zwischen aber auch den Potenzialen, Kreativwirtschaft, vielleicht auch sowas wie Inkubator, damit eben junge Leute oder einzelne Familien nicht alles selber haben müssen, auch schaffen. Was für Ideen würdet ihr jetzt schon reinschmeißen oder auch sagen, ich habe immer schon bei den Charakterentwicklungen mir gedacht, dass doch eigentlich das ein Stil ist, den man bräuchte. Auch, also wirklich sowas wie ganz stark jetzt schon, Probleme kennen wir haben wir viele, schon welche disruptiven, vielleicht auch fernab noch wirkenden Lösungen würdet ihr jetzt schon gleich sagen, das mitnehmen hinein. Das ist natürlich eine Steilvorlage, gleich irgendwie in die Lösung zu gehen, hat aber den Gedanken, ihr kennt vielleicht, diesen Double Diamond, diesen doppelten Diamanten, also Design Thinking, und wir sind eigentlich in Discovery. Also wir sind ganz am Anfang, wir sind nicht beim Defining, geschweige denn beim fertigen Developing. Aber mal beim Discovery eigentlich auch zu sagen, eben, wir gehen fix davon aus, es gibt so viel Know-how schon, man muss wirklich nicht bei Null starten, und so wie der Marc immer gesagt hat, auf die Stadt muss man, kann man nicht neu bauen, sondern neu organisieren. Also hier auch wirklich sowas wie in unsere Discovery hauen wir jetzt rein. Was gibt es hier schon an Insights, Know-how, Potenzial, was könnte es geben, auch mit dem Blick Dornbirnen, welche Leute müsste man reinholen. Wir werden das alles vertiefen. Ich glaube, ich werde das Mural nicht verwenden, aber jetzt einfach kurz zu zweit mal über das, was Disruptivity by Design. Wir wollen physische Räume, dass wir das gerade nach 18 Monaten Pandemie werden je wollen, ist das eine unhinterfragte, dass das andere auch das physische Arbeiten, eben das physische Arbeiten nicht ersetzt werden kann. Aber wenn wir eben auch dezentral arbeiten wollen, wenn wir fair verteilen wollen, wenn wir Zugangsmöglichkeiten auch über die reinen räumlichen Grenzkontrollen rausschaffen wollen, welche Ideen würdet ihr gleich schon zukünftig, die Margarita und Co. oder uns allen, wenn wir weiterdenken, da noch mitgeben? Designprinzipien, also auch eben Sense of Access Fragen. Also ich würde jetzt sagen, wir machen eben so eine 15 Minuten Exkursion in der Natur der Wasserbewirkung, die aufstehen, haben wir gesagt. Wir glauben, dass es offen ist, also das ist wirklich in der FH. Automaten, wir gehen beim Automaten raus. Oder mit der Karte. Die Fragen sind als. Okay, aber wir sehen es mindestens. Also, oder kurz rausgehen.
Wir haben ein äußerst Café in der Nähe. Das Symbol, das Symbol, das also ich will jetzt so weit.
Wenn wir zum Ankommen, okay.
Access, wie legt man Access?
Ja, das ist schon mehr Sitzbestattung, oder? Das Ganze ist, glaube ich, ein bisschen komplexer.
So viel Dinge
wie es aufgeteilt. Das ist ja auch noch die eine das Team auch die Teilstand ein Teil der Bahn wird, in einer FH. Das Gebäude gehört jetzt auch nicht ganz. Und die müssen auch die Fürsorge, die finanzielle Erhaltung tragen. Und sie wollen vielleicht das Gebäude durch dieser Kulturverein oder gegründet, wo die Geschäftsführerin auch ist. Und die tragen dann auch die Verantwortung.
Wenn es nur darum hat, wir haben gestern, also Symposium geht, aber weniger, was ist quasi mit dem Zahnschädel auch alles auf und was
Genau, da geht es immer wieder die Frage auf die Schluss, man sieht ja leider auch momentan so eine Art, so ein bisschen auch wieder Missbrauch. Alles, was eine Kraft hat, hat eine Entwicklung.
Wir müssen den Raum besetzen.
Also da steht simpel, was ist simpel.
Ja.
Nur ob den dann auch gesagt, so viel Leute zu servicieren, ob den dann auch gesagt, so viel Leute zu servicieren, ist die Frage.
die sind über Nacht, haben sie halt wirklich eine perfekte Kunstausstellung, haben den Daniel Richter gewonnen, natürlich als Kunststar noch sozusagen unter Name, und haben dann über Nacht in den ersten Tagen der Besetzung dieses Viertels, das im Kern von Hamburg war, echte Ausstellung aufgehängt, was halt dann das schnell ausräumen nicht so leicht möglich gemacht hat. Und dann haben sie eine der 12 existierende selbstverwaltete Struktur geschaffen. Das ist auch natürlich spekulatives Design, ich sage jetzt nicht subversiv, aber doch, ja, spekuliert.
Dann muss man dem sehr geschickt sein, wie schafft man die Hebel. Aber jetzt sind wir
Genau, ich habe den Hebel.
Aber ich jetzt super, dann wissen, was das eigentlich ist.
Ja, genau. Okay. Also,
Wie viel ist es jetzt?
ja.
Dann machen wir.
Also einmal die 0 zu 100 oder jetzt bis zum 12 Das ist ein Na genau, das gehen wir jetzt kurz raus.
Und ich würde sagen, wir gehen nur 15 Minuten.
Ja.
5 vor 12 wieder da. Ja.
Genau, 5 vor 12
Genau,
wieder
das
da.
ist eine gute Zeit.
Und jeder, wir meinen, biologisch wie auch immer, wir schauen noch, was wissen wir, welches Tool vielleicht für auch kollektives Nutzen, für eben Orientierung, was kennt ihr schon? Ihr kennt da doch Sachen. Nicht an. Nicht nur du. Sorry.
Aber jetzt ist noch nicht das Zusammenfassungsteil.
Also die kann ich schnell auch verkaufen und im Idealfall ist ja dann auch die Frage, wie man hier im Markt steht und viele Sachen neu sein und in diese andere Richtung zu machen. Und ich glaube, das ist eine Chance, die auch getragen wurde und jetzt im Moment ist. Ich sammle das Wissen hier in der Vorproduktion, in der Möglichkeit auch mit einem Projekt an die Wand zu knallen. Wer möchte anfangen?
Also wir haben jetzt so viel, aber wir sind was. Also wir haben uns halt zum Orientierungssystem überlegt, okay, also was ist, wenn man sagt, inklusiv sagen, was jetzt selber, dass der Logik da ist, hat immer und jeder eine Zugang zu finden, oder es soll niemand ausschließen, oder? Es wird für jeden die Möglichkeit haben, was zumindest was wir machen. Das war es dann nicht, das muss man immer weiter ausführen. Und dann zum Tun haben wir uns überlegt, okay, wie es da ausschaut, das habe ich auch dafür eine Zeit zu bewegen, aber was so wie das, wir haben nicht erzählt, also was unsere aufbauen hier eigentlich ganz, was mir ein selber Studentenprojekt ist, was aber auch wahrscheinlich verwaltet wird, oder das liegt, okay, wie stark es mal erzählt, was man jetzt geben soll, oder ja, im Maßstab, in Sandbox, 2 Leute, zum Beispiel aus Informatik oder auch Plus nehmen oder aus Intermediate, das sind dazu, sind dafür zuständig, okay, das Tool zu verhalten und abzubilden, schon ist es ein Laufen bleibt. Ich meine, das ist eine Zeit, die da klatscht, oder das automatisch die Studenten, das sind nicht nur später theoretisch, sondern nur der sympathischen. Ja, und dann so finanziell Frage war, ich weiß nicht, ob das jetzt unabhängig ist oder dass wir eben von einer, dass der außenstehende Institution oder Verein die wir angewiesen ist. Und das heißt also wieder auf jeden Fall inklusiv sein, wie es aber wirklich ausschauen soll, wie man es halt analog machen könnte oder digital, also zum Beispiel über Daten und so weiter. Und so
If you develop that, what you would like to do, then you need a lot of budget. $500,000 at least, so that you have all the components together. Unless you look for open source tools, which probably do part of the thing already. So what I found, and you were mentioning yesterday as well, I think, was Liquid Democracy. But there's another project which I currently prefer, which is Console project, which does all of the decision making, collaborative budgeting, debating. So for the internal management of such a big room for all the stakeholders which are involved. Console project. Then for the shared public calendar, I've also been investigating a lot, and now my favorite is Ganzio, which is from Italian people, which allows very easily just to add events, even without login, and then you have different views, and so it's really very easy to use. It doesn't have all the booking facilities which you probably would like to have, but it's something which we really could start with. Ganzio, yes. Then there is HumHub, which does probably 80% of that what you mentioned, but then the other 20% are missing, and this is most of the work. So this is also a platform we could use. So it has a forum, a chat, a wiki, booking possibilities which we could look at. Or we simply use what we did in the last semester here with the intermediate students chat platform. So have an internal chat for everybody who uses it. So we definitely do not go to Telegram or Signal or WhatsApp, but we have our own community with our own channels, and part of the channels are public, so everybody can read them on the web, even you are not registered yet or logged in. So it's not a fenced community, but open. And that's chatintermediate.studio. And certainly we need a public Wi-Fi. Through my good connections to AD, I know now the password, but this must be better. And we also want to have here at this old location where we had mills here from the textile industry, we want to have access to the river, which is flowing down here, access to Müllerbach, so that we can do here some experiments with making our own energy and being sustainable.
So as you possibly noticed, I've kind of slided these tools over there, although here's tools written, but it really plays into financing and also the processes and the project design, project management, and it's really a question of budgeting.
You must come here to the microphone.
Yeah, the digital manager is on my turn.
Okay.
I have to give two points. One is only analog, I think, but it's a combination, because I think if you have to use so much place, we also need mobile units. I call it mobile infrastructure unit, with staff to work, with tools, and you, of course, you can book it. Maybe there are 3-4 units with mostly used things, tools, and if you are working in you're designing a new thing. So you can book this unit, and you can look where it sits now, who was the last, and you can get there, and you need it for 3 hours maybe, and afterwards another one. It's like you rent an e-bike or something like this, right? But it's unit, it's mobile. And the other thing is, I'm thinking about, of course, sharing. If you need furniture, special chairs or something like this to work, or called Werkbank, for example, working furniture. So also you can use these things, but it's good if there are several rooms, but you know where is one, and so if this furniture is coded, with QR and so on, and you can look in a map, in an interactive map. Maybe it's an indoor GIS, and you can look. Oh, here is furniture. Here is furniture. Oh, and maybe also there is an empty. You can look, and it's this man or this guy, he will use it till 3 o'clock, and afterwards, okay, I will look there and take it. So this was a very good thing, I think. So booking from furniture, for example, and there are obviously mobile infrastructure.
Thank you. And I think you just wrote something to end this round.
Yeah, it's just like.
I think the concept in co-working space is really good because there we have a host who is responsible for the well-being of all the members. And if you're new in a space and you don't know where everything is and you're really lost, it's good to have someone you can talk to and you get help there. And I think a host would be pretty good.
And the digital comes back to the human host, but it's really always the case. I mean, yes. So, I'm looking for one.
We forgot to mention digital engagement tool, like maybe a gamified application where you get rewards. Yeah, I mean, we were kind of discussing about it, if it's too like behavioristic. But on the other hand, we know that it could work because you have to create this feeling of ownership for the place and stimulate this kind of communally oriented activity. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Also to grow and nurture.
Yeah.
I would say that the game is here. The game is the real thing. And we use mainly and we play here in these halls, and we use mainly the tools for organize ourselves. Yes. Yeah. So something could come up, but probably it's not a precondition to gamify everything also already virtually. If this is a vast place here to play our exhibitions on other things.
But I think there are good approaches. Yesterday, Philip presented his approaches, and he also did a lot of projects where the digital is combined with the physical space. And I think this is a kind of motivating approach, what he also presented. But yeah, we can discuss it.
And I think it's a very long discussion which should be ongoing. And so I believe for now, also in regard of respect towards the timing of today, we're coming to an end. And I believe two things are most important now. One is it's an ongoing process, and I think to establish this mindset, I think you talk a lot about it, this iterative, this being in a feedback loop, this talking about each other, how can we improve things, and also weigh advantages and disadvantages. This process-oriented mindset is not a cultural technique that we have installed in our educational system since for now. So I believe also this approach of the discussion the two of you just started, to keep those kind of principles also in regard to design alive is one very important thing. So to always keep it process oriented and to allow ourselves to learn, to make mistakes, start again. And of course there is, for example, evidence that when you want to allow people to play, to take responsibility, giving them a structure that allows for self-organization will really bring out very good in people. So it's mainly not disaster that comes from it. It's not designed by disaster. It's designed for self-enabling that really also gets the play going, mostly. But then again, you need to take a lot of considerations, take a lot into consideration by designing it. And what I would say now, that's the second principle, after the process orientation, also keep it open, keep this sharing aspect open. And as today, you were sharing your ideas, your wishes, but also insights, practical information, I would say that we are just guests here. It's, as we mentioned, one of our very, very first times here in Vorarlberg. feel free to also take pictures yourself, take all those ideas home, make it your own story in maybe how to bring this very space or other communities to life. So really, we certainly don't want to give off the impression that we collected now something for a closed process. It's just the very opposite. Nobody asked us to do this. This is just how we go into places because we thought it's interesting to find out about organizing and need orientation by making this room our game sphere. But nothing more, nothing less. Everybody is free to play on, develop her own rules and find the collective to make it happen. So maybe this was also important to us, the process and the openness. Is there something else that the hosts want to say?
I think it was very impressive how far we got, from collecting all the wishes and ideas and also developing kind of paths or processes or tools, maybe finding tools to really bring it to life. And I think it's an interesting project for the future, and I think it has got the possibility to be realized. But yeah, the students also have to be engaged, and I think they will. Yeah, thank you for guiding us, for facilitating us today, and yeah, so we will close the workshop now. Thanks for your online participation, and yeah, have a nice day.
Thank you.